Welcome to Convergence.fm. I'm your host, Ashok Shivanand. On the show, we explore how purpose-driven leaders align their culture, operations, and experimentation to de-risk the decisions that really matter and lead AI-enabled businesses with clarity. Convergence.fm. Transform from the inside out. On last week's episode of Convergence.fm, our guest Maya Hari talked to us about the importance of being ambitious about both purpose and profit, and how it doesn't have to be altruistic. One of the challenges that I've experienced myself, as well as seems to be a hot topic amongst many of the, I'd say, purpose-interested entrepreneurs that want to be more purpose-driven in their lives, as well as how they lead their businesses, is getting started on defining this purpose and how then we make progress in terms of going from defining all the way through to aligning our own time, as well as the time allocation of our teams and even the capital allocation, frankly, that's more purpose-driven and purpose-aligned. So we've had some success with a number of thought exercises and prompts that help get started that we added to the end of last week's episode with Maya. Since this is such a hot button topic, we wanted to bring that back to the surface and have an episode on its own that essentially replays the tag from last week. So if you haven't gotten a chance to listen to the episode, here are some thought-provoking prompts that can help you get started on a more purpose-driven life and purpose-driven work. If it is something that you find yourself pretty interested in, definitely check out that episode with Maya from last week. She gets into a lot of stories that she's learned as a founder, as a CEO, as a board member, as a corporate executive, on various ways in which purpose has or has not shown up in folks' work. And some of them get really vulnerable and they're all very authentic. So check the episode out as well. But for now, here are the thought-provoking prompts on how to get started on defining and aligning your life with your purpose. I hope you enjoyed that chat as much as I did with Maya. One of the things that she said that really stuck with me was that purpose doesn't have to be altruistic. I'll admit, this gave me relief from attention and centered me back to thinking deeper around my purpose without that caveat around altruism, at least at first. Because the way that purpose had been defined for me, at least, made it really hard for me to introspect on. It felt like it had to be magnanimous and noble, look good on a slide deck, and it was really hard to make progress, though. In reality, I'm learning that it just has to be authentic. It has to be yours. And the other thing is that you just need to get started, and you can always iterate on the definition of your purpose as you try things and ultimately learn more about yourself. She also talked about being ambitious about both purpose and profit. And this has two benefits that I've noticed whenever I've lived with an alignment with both. The profits that you generate give you more capital that you can choose to deploy further in service of this purpose. It really feels more like a sustainable system that way. The other benefit, I think, is what I'd call emotional energy. I've found that whenever I've been working in service of something that really matters to me, that's when I find myself most energized. That's when time even feels different for me. I've had days where I've barely slept and I'm working on this stuff, and I still show up fired up and raring to go. On the flip side, I've also had days where I had everything on paper going well. Key hires are signing their acceptance letters, sales, revenue, profit, accolades from myself and the company. But when the work didn't align with what I connected deeply with, I'd walk away from those days feeling flat, even after 9 hours of sleep. The problem, though, is that defining one's purpose is extremely difficult for some of us. It certainly is for me. Now, I've gotten to spend a ton of time on this myself, and I've also gotten to test and improve it through the CEO workshops that we've been doing more recently. Believe it or not, we've even started with identifying purpose and ultimately defined artificial intelligence roadmaps for companies more than one occasion. And the process in all of those cases started with understanding what the entrepreneur's or co founder's purpose was and what change they really wanted to bring to the world. And then artificial intelligence and technology became ways to unlock opportunity for them to do it more feasibly than without this tech or AI. So, if you're someone who's had that little voice in your head, like I have, that's wondering if your work could feel more meaningful, more connected to something deeper, but you haven't quite figured out how to name it yet, I want to offer you a few of the prompts that have helped me and also helped a number of entrepreneurs that we've worked with on our workshops. You don't need to wait till you have a whiteboard or wait till that annual retreat that you keep dreaming of. You can do this right now, whether you're walking the dog or on your commute or you're waiting in the school pickup line. Ask yourself these questions in these prompts. And frankly, it's okay if the answers overlap with each other. We almost want that a little bit. And I recommend pausing this episode as you answer them. If you're an extrovert like myself, I'd even recommend answering these questions out loud, as much as you may sound a little silly, to really crystallize them. The first game we like to play is called That's BS. What's something in your neck of the universe that makes you say, that's bullshit? This is something that frustrates you around the systems around you. And you and your business may even be perpetuating the system today, but it just really gets you mad. And you wonder how it's come to be and what you can change about this. I'd take a few minutes now and pause this and think about them or talk them out loud. The second question is, when is a time you've gotten to work on something or even heard about someone else working on something that really had you feeling energized? Number 3, what problems around you that you'd be willing to put time into solving, even if you weren't getting paid for it, and you didn't know for sure whether it would work? Maybe it's a cause that you find yourself donating to, or perhaps even an investment you're making in a startup or some kind of company that's solving this problem, but you're not really expecting a return financially. It just makes you feel energized that you can support the folks that are solving this problem that you feel really deeply about. I think that's a signal, and purpose often hides in the trade-offs that we're secretly already willing to make. Now, we've also borrowed some prompts from an episode of Shed and Shine podcast, where Gino Wickman of EOS and Traction fame gives us some thought-provoking questions to help identify your purpose. The first question from the Shed and Shine podcast is, what are your 3 greatest successes? The second is, what are your 3 greatest failures? Now, I think that these prompts will have trends emerge that you can sense and feel, and it'll help answer the core question of what has life prepared you for? And that's the draft. And don't worry about getting it perfect. It's meant to be messy. And then I would do this. Commit to spending at least 1 hour a week, or maybe 1% of your company's profits towards something in service of this purpose. Nothing huge, just a small experiment. Think of it as a purpose pilot. Try it for a month and see how it feels. You can always come back to the drawing board and redefine how you talk about purpose as you learn more about yourself. And then you can go on to start aligning your team and a broader context around it. Once it starts to feel real, share it with people you trust. Maybe it's your leadership team. Maybe it's your spouse, and ask them how it lands. What surprised them? What might they iterate on it? You don't need to get it perfect before you share it. In fact, I think when you bring your team in early, it gives them space to shape it with you, and you learn a lot about what's already resonating with them. Because whether or not you've named your purpose, your team is already using their best moralities and making assumptions around it. And if it's not obvious, unfortunately, they're probably going to assume that it's all just about profit, which isn't the most energizing thing. And I know that's not the whole story. If that's all you cared about, you'd be somewhere else, not building what you're building. So Share the draft, run an experiment, give your team permission to suggest ways the company could align more closely with that purpose. And try some of those ideas that come up. You'll know it's working when ideas start showing up in the hopper without you prompting your team for them, because they're kind of aligned and focused on that North Star that matters the most to you. And just like Maya said, a vulnerability is going to be a huge part of it. Don't force it. Definitely do not fake it. But don't run from it either. I have seen personally moments where the CEO shared something super deeply personal with them and even choked up and teared up in front of his entire company. This wasn't a cry for help or a cry for attention. It was a sign of the emotional connection and deep meaning to what he was talking about. In this case, it was about the work. And I could see the ripple effects that it had on the team, who were all very energized around it. So if you've been sitting on your purpose or avoiding the question altogether, this might be a good week to dust it off and take one small step forward toward it. You don't need to have full clarity, just enough to start moving and taking the first step. Thank you, as always, for trying this out with me. And whether you're finding a roadblock in the definition phase, or you've maybe had some prompts that have worked for you personally that I didn't talk about, or whether you'd like a soundboard on how to align your work, and maybe like those companies, even all the way downstream to what kind of artificial intelligence investments that you want to make, hit us up. Whether it's on our social media DMs, we check Instagram and LinkedIn especially very often, or on our website at convergence.fm and the contact page, and we'd love to have a conversation around it. We will be back next week with another episode on fostering engaged teams who ship delightful products. We'll see you then. Thank you for joining me on the Convergence Podcast today. Subscribe to the Convergence Podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your content. If you're listening and found this helpful, please give us a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button and tell me what you think about what you heard today.